ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शांति शांति शांतिः. Namaskar my dear friends, this is video number 11 on Katha Upanishad. This video starts with verse number 10 of chapter 2 of part 2 of Katha Upanishad. As the same non-dual air, after it has entered the world, becomes different according to whatever it enters, so also the same non-dual Atma dwelling in all beings becomes different according to whatever it enters, and it exists also without different, etc. The air entering a physical body as the prana is known by different names according to its different functions. The illustration is also given of the air sounding differently as it passes through different musical instruments. The objection may be raised that if the Supreme Self is the self of all things, it must then be colored by their traits. The objection is answered. Verse number 11. As the sun, which helps all eyes to see, is not affected by the blemishes of the eyes or of the external things revealed by it, so also the one Atma dwelling in all beings is never contaminated by the misery of the world being outside it, by the blemishes, etc. A reference to the contact of the eyes with impure things, and also to the befouling of the mind which sometimes follows such contact. These do not stain the sun, without whose light no external object can be seen. So also, etc. It is the reality of Atma that makes worldly objects appear real. Yet Atma, because it is unattached, remain unaffected by pain and pleasure, good and evil, and the other pairs of opposites which are falsely superimposed upon it through ignorance. The same is true of the desert and a mirage. The mirage appears to be real on account of the desert, but its traits cannot affect the desert because the two are unrelated. The following is adapted from Sankara's commentary. All beings on account of the avidya or ignorance superimposed on Atma suffers misery arising from desires and actions, but such ignorance does not in reality exist in Atma. It is through illusion that one sees snakes, silver, water, grayness, and respectively in a rope, mother of pearl, the desert, and the blue sky. The rope and the rest are not in reality touched even in the slightest degree by the objects falsely attributed to them, because they are totally external to the contrary notions so superimposed. Likewise, through ignorance, man superimposes the wrong notion of agency, action, and the fruit, comparable to the wrong notion of the snake, silver, and so on, upon Atma, and consequently experience misery, old age, and death. But Atma itself, though the self of all, is not touched by the misery created by the superimposition of a contrary notion. Why so? Because it is as in the case of the rope and the rest, quite external to the contrary notion superimposed by ignorance. It is a well-known fact that dependence is the cause of misery. The Supreme Self, which is non-dual and the Lord of all, is free from misery. Therefore, the realization of the Supreme Self should be the goal of all who seek peace and the highest good. Verse number 12. There is one supreme ruler, the inmost self of all beings, who makes his one form manifold. Eternal happiness belongs to the wise who perceive him within themselves, not to others. Ruler. The whole universe is under the control of the Supreme Self. There is none equal to him in power, certainly none greater. Makes, etc. The Lord himself is of the nature of indivisible, pure and homogeneous consciousness, but on account of Maya, diverse forms of subhuman, human and superhuman beings come into existence. Thus the non-dual Lord appears as the universe containing many names and forms, and this Maya or cosmic illusion, which has no existence outside the Lord, is his inscrutable power. Eternal happiness arising out of the blissful self and not from contact with any material object. Wise, those who are endowed with discrimination and have detached themselves from material objects perceive Atma following the instruction of the scriptures as explained by a qualified teacher. Within themselves, the Lord is manifested as consciousness in every sentient being. He is reflected in the buddhi or intellect like light in a mirror. Atman being incorporeal and all-pervading like the sky cannot have the body for its support. The Supreme Lord is the inmost self of all, even of the most non-discriminating persons attached to the material pleasures of the outside world. Yet the latter, on account of the barrier of ignorance, cannot enjoy abiding happiness. Furthermore, verse 13. There is one who is the eternal reality among non-eternal objects, the one truly conscious entity among conscious objects, and who, though non-dual, fulfills the desires of many. Eternal peace belongs to the wise who perceive him within him themselves, not to others. Non-eternal. The Lord is the one unchanging ground of the entire phenomenal existence, which is superimposed upon it through a vidya. According to the Vedas, at the beginning of a new cycle, the Lord creates the sun, the moon, the planets, and other material objects just as they existed in the previous cycle. At the end of the cycle, they are not totally annihilated, they remain in causal form merged in undifferentiated prakriti. The Lord is the unchanging substratum of the entire changing universe during its creation, preservation, and dissolution. Among conscious, etc., the deities and other living beings derive their intelligence and consciousness from the Supreme Self, as a piece of hot iron derives its power of burning from fire. Without the consciousness of Atma, all beings would become inert, fulfilled, etc. Being brings about the fruition of man's actions according to the law of karma. The law by itself cannot function. It must be administered and guided by the intelligence of the Lord. Many, the embodied beings entangled in Maya, one enjoys real and everlasting reason only through communion with the Supreme Lord. The bliss that arises from the realization of the self is no doubt beyond thought and speech, which belong to relative existence, but it is directly experienced by illumined soul. Therefore, one should not give up the effort for self-realization as impossible. One should rather strive with faith and reverence. Verse number 14. The sages realize that indescribable supreme joy as this is that how can I realize it? Is it self-luminous? Does it shine brightly or not? Sages who have renounced all worldly desires. This is that is to say, as a direct and immediate experience, distinct from indirect knowledge through inference or verbal testimony. When the sense organs stop functioning and the mind, characterized by desire and volition, becomes quiet, then alone does one attain self-knowledge as a direct experience. Does it shine, etc.? Can one clearly perceive the light of Atma by one's intellect? The doubt is raised because Atma is beyond words and thought. The doubt created in the foregoing verse is answered. Brahma is self-luminous. It also imparts light to other bright objects. Thus, Brahma can be known both directly and indirectly. Verse number 15. The sun does not shine there, nor the moon and the stars, nor these lightnings, not to speak of this fire. He is shining, everything shines after him. By his light all this is lighted. The sun which illumines all material objects. There, that is to say, in Brahma, which is the inmost self of everything. It is only the heat in boiling water that scalds. Water of itself cannot scald. Likewise, the sun, the moon, and other bright objects are not themselves luminous. It is the light of Brahma that endows them with light. The self-luminosity of Brahma is known directly by the seers in the depth of their meditation. It may also be inferred from the light of the sun, the moon, and other objects that Atma is self-luminous may also be known from the various manifestations of ego, such as I feel, I think, and I know. The ego itself is inert and non-intelligent. Here ends chapter 2 of part 2 of the Katha Upanishad. Chapter 3 of part 2 of Katha Upanishad. This is that eternal Asvatha tree with its root above and branches below. That root indeed is called the bright, that is Brahma, and that alone is that immortal. In that all worlds are contained and none can pass beyond. This verily is that eternal. The tree of samsara or the relative universe is characterized by a continuous series of births and deaths without beginning or end. The only way to cut it down is through the knowledge and realization of Atman's identity with Brahma. Aswatha tree, the well-known fig tree of India, which sends down its branches so that they strike root and form new stems. One tree growing into a sort of forest, root above. In an ordinary tree, the taproot extends downward, but in the tree of samsara, this root is high up. The root in Brahma, which is the ultimate cause of everything, according to non-dualistic Vedanta, the absolute Nirguna Brahma is beyond the category of causality. Brahma with Maya, Saguna Brahma is the root of the universe. Maya, however, has no in existence independent of Brahma. Therefore, Saguna Brahma is in reality the same as the absolute. Branches below heaven, earth, hell, and all other spheres of relative existence inhabited by either embodied or disembodied souls are described here as the downward spreading branches of the tree of the universe, or the branches may mean such cosmic principles as the universal mind, Mahat, I consciousness, Ahankara, and the five subtle elements, Tanmatras. That root, that is to say, the root of the universe, bright, self-luminous because it is pure consciousness, Brahma of exceeding majesty. In that contained the universe of names and forms is superimposed by Maya on Brahma like a mirage on the desert. As the mirage arises from the desert, rest in it, and when the truth is known, ultimately disappears in the desert, so also the universe arises from Brahma, rest in it, and ultimately disappears in Brahma. As the mirage is perceived to be unreal, when the truth regarding the desert is known, so also the universe of names and forms is perceived to be unreal when the truth regarding Brahma is known. Note none, etc. The effect can never transcend the cause. A product of gold cannot transcend the gold itself. Brahma is the cause and the universe the effect. This, etc. The Atma about which Nachiketa asked the king of death is none other than Brahma. Shankaracharya, in order to spur man on the path of renunciation, gives in his commentary the following vivid description of the tree of the universe. The universe is endowed with the unending and manifold miseries of birth, old age, death, and grief. It changes its nature every moment, like magic, a mirage, or a castle in the air. The universe is perceived only to vanish ultimately. It is known eternal, like a tree, again like a plantain tree. It has no inner substance, a subject of idle fancies on the part of many stupid heretics. Its real nature remains undetermined by wise seekers after truth. The ultimate root of the universe is the Supreme Brahma ascertained by Vedanta. Its seed is avidya, desire, action, and the unmanifest. Its sprout is Hiranyagarbha, in which are combined the powers of knowledge and activity of the lower Brahma. Its trunk is formed of the various subtle bodies of living beings. Its haughty growth is hastened by the sprinkling of the waters of longing for enjoyment. Its tender shoots are the various objects of the organs of perception. Its leaves are the Vedas, the Smritis, logic, and other forms of knowledge and instruction. Its beautiful blossoms are such deeds as the multifarious sacrifices, gifts, and penances. Its diverse tastes are the experience of joy and sorrow, and its endless fruits are heaven and the other planes enjoyed by living beings as the reward of their actions. Its numerous subsidiary roots are entwined together, fastened in the earth, and are nourished by the waters of longing for results of action. The nest in the tree have been built by birds, that is to say, all the living beings from Brahma downwards who reside in the seven higher heaven. The tree of the universe is constantly reverberating with the tumultuous noise arising from dancing, singing, instrumental music, sport, arrogant uproar, laughter, jostling, lamentations, and such exclamations as "Alas, I am done for, and leave me alone," induced by hilarity and weeping, which are the results of the happiness and unhappiness of living beings, shaken constantly by the high winds of desires and their fruits. This tree can be felled only by the irresistible sword of detachment, forged in the fire of knowledge of the identity of Brahma and Atma as taught in Vedanta. From the sight of cotton lying on the ground, a man comes to know of the existence of the cotton tree and its unseen root. Likewise, from the universe one can infer the existence of Brahma, its unseen cause. The third chapter is begin with that end in view. It may be contended that Brahma, the root of the universe, by the knowing of which men are said to attain immortality, does not exist, and that all these perceived phenomena have come out of nothing. The contention is denied. I conclude this chapter, this video here. Next video number 13 will 12 will start with verse number 2 of chapter 2 part 2. Chapter 3 part 2 of Kathopanishad. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe the channel. Thanks a lot. Namaskar my dear.